Hey everyone, I'm Jessica, and I am here to talk about another solo game today, and that is Pandemic Rising Tide. This one has actually sat on my shelf for a long time, and I didn't get to play it until recently. And I have had varying degrees of success with different pandemic titles. Some have been great, some have been okay, some have been not quite for me. And I haven't played them all, so it's a little difficult to do a comparison of what's the best pandemic game. But Pandemic Rising Tide really surprised me. It uses the same pandemic model of, you have cubes and there's going to be everything's kind of cascading effects, and there's randomized areas that are going to have different problems. There's going to be a storm card, which is like, all right, we got to change everything up, and we're going to raise the level of this, and everything changes. But for the most part, it uses that pandemic kind of foundation, but builds on it with a very different theme. One of the things with Pandemic that's been a little difficult to play the last few years is because it's about pandemics and about death and disease and all this other stuff. Not quite something that I really wanted to dig into. So Rising Tide, though, is about floods and managing flooding, and making sure that you're controlling it. And that sort of theme is a lot more approachable to me, but it is also very interesting to see how this works. There's some historical information in there because this is based on real principles. Some of the biggest structures that you're trying to work towards and build those in order to win the game, those are based on real ideas as well, or real things that are out there. And it's just fascinating to see that and how everything works there. But again, I'm not going to show everything here, but the map, again, it's going to unfold and everything, but the map is going to have all of this around it, and you are trying to control the flood. So much like every pandemic game, it is kind of impossible to remove every single cube from the board. Going for that is not really possible. You can sometimes eradicate a disease, which will help, but you can't remove every cube. So it's really about figuring out how to manage these water cubes as they're coming in, and figuring out, okay, so if this area floods, what's going to happen? Because you're kind of building up dams and other areas to sort of block the flow of that water. But again, you're not trying to stop it completely, because again, this is a huge map once you take it out and set it up on the table. But you are trying to create paths through different areas that you can manage. So maybe this area is going to flood, but what does that look like if it travels through the rest of these regions? Sometimes it's fine. It's just going to go into a few nearby areas and it's under control. You might have windmills that are going to be able to help pump that water out or remove it completely. You might have another plan for, okay, it's going to cascade through this really long path potentially, but I have that under control. Where I have failed in many respects is in not planning those routes and just trying to focus on stopping the water in a certain area. It's impossible. It's more about long-term planning and following those routes, which makes it a very different sort of pandemic title. Again, normally you're just looking at the surrounding areas and how that will play into it. But here, there's a cascading effect with water, like in real life, where it will just continue to move until it can stop. Or there's enough water that it's done. That flood is done. So it's very challenging and I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It definitely has to do with life, obviously. And again, that's why this pandemic one is a little more approachable, at least to me, because it's not all about death. Obviously, flooding is bad. Like, we don't want it to happen. We don't want anybody to suffer. But seeing it in this way and being able to actually create sort of those structures that control it, it just makes me feel a little bit better about what I'm doing. And that there's, if there's catastrophe going on, I can just picture, okay, I had all the warning stuff in effect and everybody got out fine. There's no worries. That's how I like to approach it. There's also some variants in the game that actually have population cubes that you will be using to represent people. So there's a little bit more of getting into that whole pandemic style protecting lives and saving lives, but also dealing with that. So that's in there too. I have not played through some of the variants yet. I have just been playing with the kind of the standard game, but it is awesome. And just trying to figure out and see those paths. And again, it differs with every play because, as you know, with Pandemic, you have a whole big stack of those areas or cities or whatever that come out, but they don't all come out every game. And sometimes the problem area is going to be here or it's going to be over there. And there's the different things that can happen just add a lot to it. I'm trying to think if there's other, I mean, it has cool little components too. Where are we here? There we go. There's ports and there's windmills that act as pumps, which are cool. And the water cubes look like water. That's not surprising. But the different roles that are in the game, just like, again, all the other Pandemics, in Rising Tide, you have a lot of different people with different specialties, and that changes how the game plays as well. You might have somebody who can easily travel around. Awesome. You might have somebody who can build a windmill/pump somewhere, anytime, so that you can kind of move that water out. But again, there's a lot of challenges there. You can't just pump all water all over the place. There's only 5 maximum that can go out on the board, so you might have to move one of those to a really problem area. I love Pandemic Rising Tide, though. Again, of all the Pandemics that I've played, this one is one of my favorites. Cthulhu, I like that one as well. Totally different style going on there, but that one works with, again, different mechanics. And even, I will say, base game Pandemic, which I should get out my copy because I have the original with like the old style artwork, old stuff. Just that one though, even though it's very basic, that is just really nice to go back to and kind of see how it has grown over the years with these different other spin-offs and titles. So that, again, is Pandemic Rising Tide. As always, thanks for watching and take care. Bye!